Welcome to Parenting GPS, navigating your parenting journey. I'm Kari Kling, the host of your show. You know, preserving our family legacies is something that most people would like to do, but sometimes we think about those things once it's too late, once our loved ones who are older and hold those family stories may have passed away. And in honor of Grandparents' Day in the United States, I'm not sure that that's a holiday or a recognition globally. September 6th was Grandparents' Day last Sunday, as I said, and I wanted to do something special to honor the grandparents in our lives and our family legacies. In fact, I'm wearing my grandmother's earrings today in honor of this. I'm not sure how old they are, but I remember that she wore them when I was a little girl. And so I want to begin today by sharing just a thought with you. Most of us don't think about talking to our grandparents and our parents when we're young because it's just not something we think about. And I don't have very many regrets in my life, but one of my regrets is that when I was maybe a teenager, even in my 20s, that I didn't sit down and talk with my grandparents about their lives growing up. And so we're going to try to change that today and give you the tools to do it in such an easy way. I have 3 guests today, and we're going to begin with our first guest, Sunny Jane Morton, and I'm going to introduce her to you now. Sunny Jane Morton is a genealogy expert and known by audiences all around the world for giving inspiring instruction on discovering and sharing your family history. A contributing editor at Family Tree Magazine and the content director for YourDNAGuide.com, she's authored hundreds of resources, including the book, Story of My Life, a workbook for preserving your legacy. She grew up with 5 brothers and has raised 3 children with her husband in Cleveland, Ohio. Sunny, thank you so much for being here today.
Kari, thank you for having me. What a great topic.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. You know, Sunny, I've seen so many of your videos on YouTube and just the work that you've put out. And I have your book, The Story of My Life. We're going to talk about this and how people can use this to preserve their own family legacies. I want to begin by asking you, where did this passion that you have for this come from?
Well, I have to blame that one on my parents. It goes back to childhood during the summer. Instead of taking us to fun places like Disneyland, my parents took us to places like family reunions and historic sites. And so I learned really young, I think, to really value the past and the people who lived in it, to think about them and what their lived experiences were like. So fast forward, I got degrees in history and humanities, eventually became very interested in family history specifically. I began writing for genealogy audiences, and the rest is my history. That's what brings me here.
It's so exciting. And I know there are sites out there that, it's become more popular over the years of, I don't want to say the names of them because I might get them wrong, but the sites where you can actually go and put your names in and, see things. Do you find that the interest in genealogy and family history has grown over the years because of tools like that?
Absolutely. It's in the past, tracing your family tree was really kind of a retired person's hobby. It went at a slow pace. You had to go to libraries and write away for answers and wait for the mail to come back. And really, it was something that older people typically put most thought into. And while that's still true now, I think a lot of people who don't necessarily grow up in a multi-generational environment with all the branches of their family tree nearby, I think they're curious. And the online tools we have, both for exploring the old documents at places like Ancestry.com, but also for DNA testing, have really made it possible to ask really good questions and maybe get some insightful answers about your family history without it taking quite so long.
Exactly. And speaking about taking so long, the reason most people, as you just said, don't try to do that when they're younger is they don't have the time. And so for those of you out there listening who are raising your children, you're working, you may be thinking, oh, well, this is a great idea, but I don't have the time for this. How do I do this? And so this is where your book comes in. And we're going to talk about some of the specifics in the book, but you have created, it's not just a book, but it is a workbook where you can actually, you don't have to do anything other than get the book, and you can say to your family members, you know what, will you fill out these certain sections? And then you don't have to do anything. And if you want to do something later on, put it in some kind of like a Shutterfly or, you know, that kind of a book, or do something else with it. You can always do it, but at least you have the information. Let's take a moment, Sunny, and talk a little bit about some of the categories that you have here. I'm going to just say a few of them that are on your table of contents, and then I know you have some questions for me. Some of the categories are gathering your family stories, statistics about me, stories about early family life, stories from childhood, stories from high school, stories from my professional life, my own family, reflections on my personal life, my values, and on and on. So it's a wonderful, easy tool that you can, you know, say to a loved one, will you fill out this section over the next couple months if you need it, before it's too late.
Absolutely. And I think that one of my favorite parts about this project and coming up with these hundreds of questions to try to help people dig into their memories and think not just about the memories, but about the relationships, about the people who mattered to them, and think about why this story matters to you now. Why did you hold on to it? Why do you want to tell it now? How did this person matter to you? How did they impact you? I think those kinds of questions are enriching not just for the historical record, but for our sense of identity today and in the future, who we are and how we related to the other people around us and the people who loved us.
And it's that sense of belonging. One of the things as humans, one of our greatest needs is that sense of belonging. And that really, you know, your work really helps put that in perspective. And so, Sunny, we're going to highlight a few of the pages, and so now I'm going to ask you, which page or which section would you like to share with our viewers so that
Well,
they have an idea?
that's a great question. And you just let me sort of dive in, and I'm going to have to, it's that time of life where the glasses come on when I need to look at this. But for example, when I open to a section from my childhood, I can see here that I'm asked lots of different questions about my childhood. And one that I love is about asking about your relationship with your sibling. And that's a really big question. It can be fraught, kind of a fraught question, because relationships change over the time. Sometimes they're hard. There are hard elements of it. But this one focuses, I try to slow people down and let's just focus on what that relationship was like during your childhood. Did one of you lead and one of you follow? Was there teasing or bullying or ignoring? Did you look out for each other? Were you rivals? Were you friends? Were you frenemies, as my children say? What did you share? Did you share a bedroom? Did you share toys, clothes, girlfriends? What kinds of things how well did you share the limelight? Did you compete for it? What was something that was kind of unique about your relationship? Is there a special, a place that you both hung out together, or an in-joke, or something that really defined you, your common interests in your relationship as a child? So you can see that those prompts really aren't just what was your relationship like with your sibling. It really kind of digs in and lets you pull out the things that you want to talk about that mattered to you.
Exactly. And you know, the thing I love about it is you can do as much or as little as you choose to. You can pick one of those things.
Right.
And so in the time that we have left in our first segment, I know you had a question for me based on your book in one of the sections.
I did. I just want to show you how fun it is to pull out a story that matters to you. So I gave you a couple of choices because it's always great to give someone a choice about what kind of story would you like to tell us. And I ask you, Kari, to tell us something about your first job.
My first job. And that's such a great question, Sunny, because it's so connected to my life's purpose. And that is, my first job was babysitting. I made 50 cents an hour, but if there were more than 3 children, it was 75 cents an hour. And I knew, I've said in prior things, I knew when I was 5 years old that I wanted to work with families and to be a teacher. And that never changed. And so having the opportunity to be a babysitter in my early life, um, just propelled that passion that I had for working with children. So yeah, here I am. I've been doing this all these years working with families, and it all stemmed from childhood.
And
So
this is the kind of story that a child or a grandchild in your life could connect with. They know what a babysitter is. They're interested in your first job as a teenager. You only made that much, and I'm looking at making this much in my first job. So there are points of connection here that help make this story relevant to your young audiences. I love that about that story. Thanks, Kari.
Oh, thank you for asking it. It's all about perspective. And speaking of stories, when we come back, we're going to continue talking with you, Sunny. And then we have 2 other guests that have another kind of book to help us share stories and pass on and preserve our family legacies. We'll be right back. Sunny, now that we have an idea about your book, an overview of the book, and a little bit of information about where this came from, what is your advice for people who want to begin to do this but aren't really sure where to start?
Great question. So, first, ask your relatives what they can tell you and record their stories while they're still around to get their stories. And like you said, Kari, everyone's, if you're in the middle of raising children or if you're in a real busy season of life, at least start with that part while they're still here to have those relationships and get those stories. Get a family tree form online. It's really easy, and write down names and dates and places about your relatives. And then go look for those names and dates and places on websites like familysearch.org, which is free, or ancestry.com, which is a subscription site, but a lot of libraries have it also. So you can ask at your local library. And then look around for librarians or other local groups that can help you find the answers that you're looking for. And don't give up. Even if you just get a little ways into the process right now while you're in a busy season, just set it aside, keep it around, and come back to it later. You'll be really glad you did.
Absolutely. And even some of the stories, if your older relative isn't able to write it down anymore or something, have them just record it into a phone or any kind of
Absolutely.
device.
I've seen people use my book to just read questions out loud to their relatives and capture them on their phones, just on their little audio recorder or video recorder. It can be really simple.
It's such a great idea. And again, that the big idea is documentation, whether it's verbal, whether it's written, but to save those stories. And speaking of stories, I would like to introduce another kind of book, another way that you can preserve family legacies within your own family. And today we have 2 other guests. It's a mother and son, Heidi Solomon-Orlick, and her son, Daylen Orlick. And I want to share a little bit about them before I tell you what we're going to share with you today. Professionally, what they do is they don't produce children's books in terms of that's their main job, but because of the upbringing that they had and the kind of family that they had, they feel that it allowed them to be successful. Heidi has been a successful businesswoman for 35 years. And has won all kinds of awards. And Daylen is working on his PhD. And by the way, he's beginning his own family. He just got married a few weeks ago, and congratulations again to Daylen. But what Daylen did in honor of his grandfather is something that when I saw it, I knew I wanted to share with you. So first, let me welcome Heidi and Daylen. Welcome to Parenting GPS.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And so The book that you published, Daylen, is dedicated to your grandfather, Alvin Solomon, and there's a story that goes with it. And so I'd like to ask you, Daylen, would you share how did this book come to be? And Heidi, I'd like you to add anything to it about your dad.
Yeah. So my grandfather and grandmother passed away in 2019. And so that was kind of me coming right into my professional career and was trying to find ways to kind of honor and remember them. And there's tons of different outlets in which you can kind of do so. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to turn the stories they used to tell me when we were growing up. And by growing up, I mean, since I was born all the way into my 20s or until they passed, they were telling me these stories before bed. And I was like, I'm going to turn those stories into a children's book one day. And it kind of sat on the back burner while I was, establishing my career and moving. And now I'm in a PhD program, like you mentioned. And this past year, decided this is the time. There's no more waiting around. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Let me just go ahead and do it. And so I just did it. I don't know. I have a habit of just kind of putting my mind to something and trying to make it happen, and felt that way and felt very passionate about this project. And one night just felt very inspired and pulled out my phone and wrote in my notes app just the story of what it was going to be, and then sent it along to a friend of mine and said, would you be willing to illustrate this alongside me and let's make a children's book? And thankfully she said yes. And now it's sitting on my table and in your house and everything else.
Absolutely. And we're going to have you read just a few pages of that in just a moment to share with our viewers. Heidi, these were the same stories that your dad told you before bed when you were a little girl. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I love about this whole project, right? Is to see how first of all, the stories are just so much bigger than ourselves, and that the impact that they can have generation over generation. And as Daylen starts his family, I hope he continues to share some of these stories and create some of his own. But my father was an entrepreneur and salesperson, one of the best salespeople I knew, and a master storyteller. And he traveled a lot for his job, but when he was home, he would tuck me in to bed at night when I was a young girl, and he would create these magical stories about a family of elephants, Mumbo, Jumbo, and Dumbo. And Dumbo was particularly precocious and mischievous young elephant that was always getting into trouble, which was me, of course. But just how, the challenges that they had and how they overcame them, and how they came together, at the end of the story as a family to take on the next challenge. And by the way, probably no surprise, I ended up in sales. And when you think about storytelling and you think about overcoming challenges and creating solutions, that's really the foundation of sales. So Sunny, you brought that up, that sometimes these stories or your legacy could really impact who you are and as a person. Well, these were foundational for me, as well as Daylen and my other two boys as well.
Awesome. And thank you for making those connections for us. And so, Daylen, I'd like to ask you to go ahead now and let's share just a little bit about this story, just the first 3 or 4 pages, if you would, with our viewers.
No problem. So, knock, 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 knock. Who could it be at the door? Well, it's Mumbo, Jumbo, and Dumbo, of course. They've been looking for you up high and down low. They've been on an adventure in the sun and through the snow. Mumbo spent the day sitting by the pool, sipping on milkshakes just to keep cool. And Jumbo went hiking and saw some beautiful trees. Red, orange, and green were the colors of those leaves. And I'll let the readers and listeners read the rest of the book. I won't get too far into it.
And we're going to, at the end, we're going to give them the information about where they can find their own copy of the book if that's what they'd like. But, you know, it's the big point is this is the story that was really important to you and your mom growing up, and now you have the opportunity to pass it on to your future children, and other people can look at it and enjoy your grandfather's legacy as well. And so it doesn't matter what the story is, the fact is it's your story, and that's it for everybody. Whatever your story is, whatever, you know, if there are some special bedtime stories or just, you know, about a family gathering, anything, but to be able to document all of those things is so important. Heidi, what did it mean to you to have Daylen publish the story, one of the bedtime stories that your father told you when you were a little girl?
Yeah, I got to tell you, he surprised me with it. So I knew it was a project and a passion that he always wanted to do it, but I didn't know until it was actually just about to go to publishing. So I completely bawled and cried and just thought it was, well, it's just so Daylen, right, to do this. But it was a real honor and tribute, not only to my father, but just to our family legacy. So it meant a lot. But what was cool is that every story is actually different. So the story that my father told me, even though the sort of premise was the same, Daylen's experiences were very different. And the experiences that were called out in the book are things that we used to do together when we would go and visit them in California. So going to the pool and, you know, going and seeing the leaves. And so that it's cool because it's family legacy, but it's also what really resonated with Daylen personally.
And that's the beauty of it for everybody is,
right,
you know, no matter what family you are in, every member in the family might have a different perspective of the meaning of that. And that's so special. So Daylen, let me ask you, is this going to be a one and only, or do you have other family stories from your parents and your grandparents that you'd like to publish?
Yeah, I hope it turns into a line of stories and, you know, a collection of stories from, you know, myself growing up. I think how I kind of wanted to frame the first book is really they could serve as jumping off points from any page to then be an adventure elsewhere, right? And so while these stories are kind of a collection of things that I would do with my grandfather, or even things that I would do with my own family when visiting my parents, you know, where they live or whatever else, you know, I think kind of taking some of that beauty and spinning it off into various series is the dream and the hope. Got to get back through school again for the third time. And then once I do that, I will focus some more energy into turning more and more books out. But the hope is to have a collection of it.
Well, I personally look forward to reading them whenever you do. And once again, it's my hope that both your book and Sunny's book trigger something, a passion in somebody to say, wait a minute, that's a way that I can help preserve my family legacy. And when we come back from our break, we have some questions from our viewers that would like to know some things about how they can help preserve their family legacies. We'll be right back. This is the part of the show where we reach out to you, our viewers, to find out what you would like to know about the topic of the show. And today we have two questions, one for Sunny and one for Daylen and Heidi. And I'm going to read them to you now. The first question is for Sunny. Sunny, this question is from Willie K. from Richmond, Virginia. Willie writes, I am 35 years old and I am adopted. My adoptive parents have passed away and now I feel like I'd like to try to learn more about my biological parents and my family history. Where should I start?
Willie, great question. I'm sorry about the loss of your adoptive parents. I do see it opens up some avenues for you to ask new questions, maybe that didn't feel like you could ask so much before. When it comes to a search for birth roots, boy, it's never been a richer field to explore, because now we have two avenues available to us. And the first is DNA testing. And what DNA testing can do is show you the places that your ancestors' lines are associated with historically. So where your roots are from and the cultures they're from. And it can also link you to some of your birth relatives, other people who have tested with the same company. So I would definitely suggest you get started with the DNA test if you're ready to have those kinds of experiences and learn those kinds of things. Then that's where I would start. Your experience could be, there's a variety of experiences that people have when they do that. And so I would advise you to maybe listen around to some of the experiences people have had, connect with the birth root seeking groups on social media, online and in your community, and listen to advice. The other avenue that you have is documentation. Depending on where you live, original documents pertaining to your birth and adoption may be available to you, even if they weren't available to you in the past. And so I would look into that for the place that you live. Maybe get some help again from advocacy groups or friends who know a little bit more about the place that you were born. And anyway, I would take both of those avenues and let the clues you get from both of them help your search and help you construct a birth identity that's meaningful to you.
Oh, so important. That's great advice, Sunny, to at least help Willie begin. And I'm sure it's a long process, but at least it's a place to start. Thank you so much. And our second question today is from Sandra M. from Philadelphia. And Sandra loves the idea of publishing a book with family stories. And so she's actually curious, Daylen, about your book. Did you self-publish or find an established publisher, and what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sandra. I think for myself, it was easier to go the self-publishing route. There's a lot of amazing resources that are available online to be able to do that for no cost at all. And so I published through a company called Ingram Spark, which allowed me to get into digital retail stores for, things like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and, international locations. And they have ways to publish just with creating your own content and sizing guides and everything else for how to kind of size properly, what is recommended for all of those locations, for print locations. And what's amazing about them that I found is that they do print on demand services for your book. So when people are ordering through these tools and ordering through these locations, you don't have to worry about accruing the costs necessarily for printing or for delivery or for any of that. They deliver it right to their doorstep. And then you get, a percentage of whatever is sold, which is amazing. And so you don't necessarily need to do too much work after it is already put through the site and approved, and you determine what your publishing date is going to be. So I definitely recommend going the self-publishing route. It's a lot more work for promotion and a lot more work for, setting up maybe your own book tour or whatever else when you're not going through those things. But if you're just looking to do it for, your own enjoyment, or for people to just try to learn about your stories and find a way to do that, then I definitely recommend doing the self-publishing route.
And thank you for sharing your journey of how you did it. And I just want to say, I don't think there's a right or a wrong, whatever you decide to do. Each option has pros and cons, and you just have to do what you're able to do.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
believe it or not, we are almost out of time. And so I'd like to take this moment to ask each of you to let our viewers know where they can find out more about you, about, what we've talked about today. And Sunny, we're going to start with you. Would you please share with our viewers your website, where your books can be purchased, your videos, anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. So the book is Story of My Life, a workbook for preserving your legacy. And Kari, like we said, it's a really great tool, whether you want to fill in the blanks in the book workbook itself, or ask the questions in a family conversation, or even a school project where you're interviewing a grandparent. You can get the book on Amazon or wherever you buy your books. And if you want to connect with me, I'm at www.sunnymorton.com, or if you've got more great DNA questions like Willie's, you can find us over there at www.yourdnaguide.com.
Excellent. Those are such great resources. And Daylen, you already shared your book can be purchased. Tell us once again, Barnes and Noble, keep going.
Yeah, so it can be purchased at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or wherever you buy your books as well. And you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Daylen Orlick. And I'm happy to talk to you about the route that I took, or any questions that you have about my grandfather's stories.
That's awesome. And thank you for offering your support. Heidi, if people want to get a hold of you and find out just about the stories and how it impacted your life, where can they find you?
Yeah, I would love to talk to anybody who's considering, sharing their legacy stories. The best place to reach me is LinkedIn. I'm very accessible, just under my name, Heidi Solomon-Orlick, and send me an invite to connect, and we'll schedule some time to chat.
Awesome. Thank you, all three of you, for your willingness to help give others a jump start, if you will, and help them to learn ways that they can preserve their family legacies. And I'd like to thank all three of you for being here today. And I'd like to end with a quote. And the quote is from you, Sunny. And you said, and this is in your book, "We share our life stories for many reasons. We want to make sense of the past or relive cherished memories. We want to set the record straight. We want future generations to know us as we really are and benefit from the lessons we've learned." Thank you so much for being here, all three of you.